Hey guys, this is Mikro. I wanted to make a kind of a first video in a series of videos that will likely be out about info for the new expansion. This one I wanted to talk about if you should actually buy this expansion or if you should just uninstall New World, because I believe this is the question that a lot of people are going to be asking themselves once this expansion releases. The reason why I say that is this is a $30 expansion that for some people who have multiple characters, not gonna name names here, but that's pretty common within the PvP scene, which I know is the majority of my audience, that you are gonna have to buy this expansion for every single character in order to be competitive on a PvP level. You're also gonna have to buy this expansion to be able to access the PvE. The PvE is gonna be limited from the 10 mutations that were previously there. Those are gonna be removed. Instead, there's gonna be an M1, an M2, and an M3. Your gear score is going to scale up to 700, as said here in this article, which I'll link in the description, and the max level is going to be increased. So you're effectively going to get kind of crept in terms of power level if you continue to play this game without buying the expansion. And the problem I have with that is they're removing content from the game for people that already had the previous experience and effectively, uh, quote unquote, dividing the player base is, I believe, the term that like to be used in Destiny a lot with expansions, where some people would buy them and some people wouldn't. And the people that didn't buy them felt like they were playing an entirely different game and it just generally wasn't as fun. And I think the same thing is going to be coming to New World. This is kind of commonplace within the industry nowadays, it seems like, but you do have a decision to make if you want to spend the money that you would need to spend to get this expansion for all your characters. You'd have to level up those characters, etc. Or you could just put everything under one account and then re-level those specific characters if you have lots of specific characters. Now, the gear from the past expansion is getting converted, so everything that has resilience getting converted to health. There's a passive bonus for resilient, which I don't know what this article mentions completely. But what is changing there is the resilient itself is getting removed. If you're in light, you're going to get a passive effect of basically 3 resilient. If you're in medium, you're going to have 4, and if you're in heavy, you're going to have 5. So this is going to make the tankier builds heavier, obviously, and going to make them have additional reduced damage versus crits. So this is like overall a pretty positive change. Uh, there's other things that are coming with the expansion, obviously, like there's a new area, there's a new like actual town that you can conquer, if you will. There's a new alt. There's a new expedition. There's a new weapon, which is the flail, which is going to be super interesting. There's this new concept called an artifact, which is basically an exotic piece from Destiny, if you want to think about it that way, where it's a one of a kind item that you could have one equipped on your armor, one on your jewelry, and then one weapon at a time. So you have all of those, you have your heart rune, everything's gonna seems to feel very unique. I would say overall this is like starting to sound a little bit too good to be true. I'm kind of waiting to put my eggs in the basket though to wait for a gameplay trailer. The thing with or like a live gameplay session, like the thing with all these New World right now is I feel like they could talk all this up and it sounds great, but until I could see the game running stably at like 60 frames per second on a moderately good PC, I would not be convinced that this is like a game that you would want to get into right now. It's a game that is sounds very promising that's coming in the future and is like a very cool concept, but I don't believe the vast majority of gamers would be able to run this game effectively. You compare this game to any other kind of MMO on the market, and I don't believe that we really come close to being able to support the majority of PCs, and the minimum specs for New World at this point are completely outdated and are not accurate. Like I believe you need to have at least a 20 like 2060 2070 graphics card. I think some people have like a 1080, which is equivalent to about those as well. And it runs on those kind of levels of graphics cards, but you're mostly CPU bottlenecked and it's just very difficult to consistently get above, I'd say, 30 frames in a PvP area or just a heavily occupied area. They're also going to be coming up with mounts. I think that was kind of expected. They're going to be bumping up your trade skills with everything up to 250, so you have those extra levels to grind, and maybe we'll get some bonuses out of those. They're delivering kind of customized armor and weapons that you can instantly roll at max gear score. There's no longer this umbral shard system. Instead, those items are just going to roll at their natural levels. So that's something that they're adding. They're adding in all this like really, really cool stuff. But the thing that I wanted to like mostly focus about in this video is if you do not get this expansion, you are effectively not going to be able to play PvP at a high level. Even I would argue even a moderate level. Like I don't think you're going to be able to compete in open world. I don't think you're going to be able to compete in OPR, 3v3, 1v1, etc. Because the weapons itself have 6 perks from these artifacts. They are just insanely strong. Like for example, one of the ones that they went over in the dev video, which I'm gonna make another video about, was a great axe that completely scales off of int. Like say that's really really good, and you could have a player go great axe and void goblin and empower themselves with the tether before they go for a great axe combo. Like maybe that's insane, but you're not gonna be able to do that if you don't have the new expansion. Also, these people with the new expansion are gonna have 600 attributes versus the current one right now is about 510. So it's just not comparable. And that 510 is like with the five at the base levels. I believe it's technically 500 right now. So I just don't think that you're going to be able to compete if you don't buy this expansion. So if you're in a situation right now where you have 4 to 5 characters, the value of those accounts just basically plummeted to null. So just know that, and it's probably not the expansion for you. I think for the vast majority of players, this is a very welcome change because it will eliminate the vast majority of warlogger oriented accounts and will focus people to concentrate on one server because these artifacts are things that have to be leveled, and it's something that's going to be hard to do on a large amount of characters at the same time since that stuff didn't exist in the past and it's this new system that you're going to have to adapt to. So that's going to allow newer players to be seen more in that PvP situation, like that PvP environment, which I think is overall good for the game, but it will take some time for that like kind of power level of those new players, I think, to catch up with the players that are actually playing in those game modes. It is also noteworthy that you're not going to even be able to you're not going to be able to war until you actually capture or you get a declare, which is going to be a change system that is a timed based event where you need to push missions, capture objectives, and from there, if your faction gets the majority of those bonuses, you'll have the option to declare war and potentially the option to attack. This is not going to eliminate the opportunity for older companies to defend. That being said, older companies very easily can lose all their defenses at the same time if every company just attacks every territory at the same time. So it's like a situation where, say, for example, let's talk about dropouts. Say dropouts has Windsward, Everfall, Brimstone Stands, and Brightwood. This would probably never happen because Supple's too good at the game, but say that were to happen. If dropouts got quad decked, I think best case scenario, if people didn't buy the expansion, we'd be able to hold one territory, maybe two, if the opponents are like really really bad. And at that point, their dropouts is down to 2 territories, and likely will not be able to push those territories back because dropouts is a bunch of warloggers. Like just saying that for argument's sake. So this is overall going to reduce the amount of territories that companies can own and kind of allow new companies to emerge in the scene. That being said, I feel like this emergence of new companies in that war scene is going to be mostly artificial and won't necessarily be based off of like kind of a war skill, but there's going to be a separation from that open world combat skill where you're trying to keep that influence going both on attack and defense so that you can hold your territories better. And there's also going to be like that war situation where it's just going to be difficult to be to master both environments. I think they are effectively decreasing the amount of wars that players will have access to, which is going to increase the skill gap between newer players and older players in that war scene. But the players in that war scene, with the gear gap that they will occur if they don't buy the expansion, will not be able to hold as many territories as they did. And even if they did buy the expansion, if they just warlog, they would not be able to hold the territories that they held because of the new system. And if people can just quad deck or do whatever they want to do to get those declares, get that first flip, it will be very hard to reacquire that territory. So overall, I think this is a really positive change, and all these changes look really, really good. My main gripe right now with this system is that if you're a player that does not want to buy the expansion, I don't believe there is a spot for you in New World anymore. So say if you're a player that's returning the New World, you wanted to try it out, or like during these one of free events, you would not really get to experience the vast majority of New World. You could experience the leveling experience, which is greatly improved, I'd say, up to about level 45, and then after level 45, it starts to feel really grindy, in my opinion, based off leveling up a character in EU. But overall, it's very improved, and you can experience that, but you would not be able to experience the vast majority of content in the game, which I think is okay because there's like this New World end game now, which is more defined and seems like it's going to be improved a little bit better overall. But there is definitely going to be a divide in player base between the casual players and the newer players. At the very minimum, the bots will not be able to get into this new zone effectively and like farm that. So I think we'll at the minimum see at least one area that is more PvP oriented slash like kind of more player oriented. I guess not necessarily PvP, but there will be more players in that area. And this looks like a good start. But I wanted to bring to attention to you guys that if you're not going to buy this expansion, or you're not planning on buying the expansion because you have too many characters and you just can't support that or something like that, you probably just need to quit New World. The other thing I wanted to bring up is that all that gear that you've acquired so far is effectively worthless. The reason why I say that is there's going to be a gap. You're not going to be able to level your gear, right, from 625 to 700, so there's that first gap. The second gap is they're replacing the resilient with a health perk. The problem with the replacing resilient to a health perk, at first everyone's like, oh my god, this is a must-have perk. Like, you're just replacing resilient with health. You're going to have health now. Well, the thing with that is health is based off your base HP. Your base HP in New World is about 6,000 if I'm not mistaken. So say that you had a perk that gave you 10% extra max health. Like, that would be a relatively strong perk, and that would effectively give you 3,000 extra HP. I don't know if that would be worth it for the vast majority of builds with the new perks that seem to be coming for this next expansion or not. So I don't think that the gear that you're necessarily going to have will be strictly better. And I think that 10% is a very greedy number. More likely it's going to be 5%. And if it's replaced with a 5% threshold, then you're going to get 25% of 6,000, which is just not a very big number. If I pull up a calculator here and I do that, because I can't do math today off the top of my head, that's like an increase in 1,500 HP for 5 gear pieces. That's just generally not worth it. That's worse than perks like Shirking Heals and Invigorated even. Like, it's just not worth it. So basically all your gear that is contained right now is useless. Everything that you do up into this expansion time-wise is effectively useless except for earning money, which you could use to acquire items from the trade post that will boost your progression when the expansion comes out. So I wanted to let people know that, and I'll see you guys in the next video where I'll deep dive more into some of the changes that are coming to this expansion itself. Peace.